Afternoon, everybody. We are 1 week removed from the Daytona 500, and NASCAR is back in session. So we knew last year that Chris Gabehart had announced his intentions to depart the, the JGR organization. It had been rumored he was going to go to Spire. I don't think it's even still been officially announced he's at Spire, even though that's what this lawsuit alleges. So with that, we'll get into the he said, she said, or they said of it. So, and what's being accused, and then there's this. Apparently, there's this high roller club that they announced at Daytona that'll be at select tracks. The 1948 club, not 89, 98, whatever I called it, but 48 club. So, and apparently, Blake's wife has money and an invitation to go, and she didn't invite him. So he's very upset about this. So let's start with the lawsuit. So we knew last year Chris Gabehart had announced he was going to depart from Gibbs, and then it became official back in January. Since then, Joe Gibbs has named him in a lawsuit alleging that he took trade secrets to Spire after he didn't get his demands to be basically given more authority within JGR. And in the lawsuit, with what I'm reading so far, I don't see where they named the day they discovered it yet. That's what I'm looking for. And I'll get into why later. Now, obviously, Gabehart has said, yeah, you're full of crap. Basically, that they're just butthurt, more or less, and that they're falsely accusing him that JGR's own forensics or a third party forensic evidence investigator examined his personal laptop, cell phone, Google Drive, and found no evidence to support the claims JGR has, and that JGR was also provided an opportunity to have the third party forensic investigator do the same thing to Spires to prove, that none of their material was present, none of those things happened, and they turned it down. So that'll be an interesting point in the court if we get to court and there's no type of settlement or anything like that, because we haven't even gotten to all the preliminary hearings and everything. But I wanted to talk about this just because, I work and have for 25 years in fields that deal with sensitive information and have either non-disclosure agreements, non-compete agreements, etc. So to me, this one's a very interesting claim that JGR is making because I have a lot of questions about the material that if it's alleged he took and they've got proof that he took it. I would like to know what it was marked. Was it marked competition sensitive? Was it marked proprietary? When did they know it that he had access to it? I, as somebody who does insider threat programs for various organizations, I'd like to know what took him so long to notice that he was exfiltrating this stuff, and why in the hell do you have the ability even to connect something like a Google Cloud to a company asset in the first place? Like, that's a big deal. So with that, I'm gonna take a minute and just see, what do y'all think about this first off?
I
Go ahead, Chris.
honestly, I honestly think it's almost like the bullshit that we listen to with what they're constant. I mean, they've done it with Biden, they've done it with Trump, always complaining about, well, they've got confidential files. Well, holy fuck, they were in such a high position. How do you expect them not to have access to stuff like that? Except, especially somebody like Gabehart.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I think it's more of a hard feelings thing than anything else. They're pissed now that he left. When you need to look a little farther down the fucking ladder there, and you need to look at the motherfucker sitting in that 54 car, because that's why fucking Gabehart left. That's where all that shit started from, and that's why Gabehart left.
Yeah, I don't know who all has left yet, but there were some bleeding of personnel over the offseason from JGR to various organizations, from what Jordan Bianchi and Jeff Gluck had highlighted. They didn't name personnel because Gabe Hart's like the highest person overall, other than like any crew chiefs or things like that. So to me, again, this is just based off my experience in the world I work in. One of the first questions, like I said, is like, why do you even have the ability to do that? Of course, it's expected that they will have access to this kind of material. I look back to last year when Rodney, or to 2 years ago when SHR shut down, or announced they were shutting down, and Rodney was moving to Spire, and what kind of things was he allowed to take? Because this isn't uncommon that crew chiefs and competition directors, personnel move around, drivers, etc. So, I could see where it would be considered, your setup, especially with as tight a competition is in these cars, that it would be competition sensitive. But if you don't go through the efforts to properly mark your material and say that these setups, when you create them, are property of JGR, for example, or Hendrick, and you can't take them with you, then basically, unless you memorize them, like Larry McReynolds has mentioned before last year during the stuff that, he was allowed to take certain notes and things from him when he went from, RCR to, or for was the other way around, but either way, going from Yates to RCR and vice versa, and things like that. And Rodney mentioned there were certain things he was allowed to take and certain things he couldn't take when he was leaving SHR, even though they were shutting down and there were things he created. That's a tangible monetary asset at the end of the day that I can sell or leverage in terms of my partnerships, and why is it so expensive to be tethered to JGR, for example, versus, and Hendrick versus, just an alliance with a middle tier team. Part of that information sharing is, those setups, that information learned from those setups. So I can see why they would be upset if what they're alleging truly happened. My curiosity is mostly around what kind of protections they had around this material to start with. What kind of non-competes or non-disclosures were there? What specifically about these what specific elements are considered competition sensitive, especially with these kit cars in particular, where all the parts are the same. And then I think the biggest thing it does is, whether it's true or not, let's just assume it's true for a minute. It puts a really big black eye on JGR in terms of not only did you lose this guy, but you knew after he had requested some stuff that was a possibility, and you didn't take steps to protect your information. Again, what took so long for you to catch that he had allegedly hooked up his Google Drive and exported or exfiltrated, assuming they're properly marked, team sensitive setups and aerodynamic information, or other contractual information. So I know that was a lot. I'll give you guys the floor.
So the kind of go back to what Chris was saying. The thing is crew chiefs leave all the time, just like you said, Alan. But I'm sure they don't leave while inserting a USB and taking info. I'm sure that that's not something that happens regularly, if ever. We were talking on the phone about how back in the 90s and even as a couple years ago, people were saying, you're taking our information and so on and so forth. But I think this is what the USB, we're taking information. It's not, remembering something from memory. We had this set up or that. It's the tangible insertion of a USB and taking information that's not yours is the problem, correct?
That's what they're alleging, essentially. Yes. So,
and there's no way to fake that, probably.
Well, and so that's where, again, I look at what
he probably has
I've
his own
done.
login.
Yeah, he would have a unique login. So inside of your files, this is probably way nerdier than anybody that listens wants to get, just like we were getting into the details and the meat with the last lawsuit of like how the sauce is made. Essentially, this is kind of the same thing. When you create a file, touch a file, modify a file, whatever, you leave behind what's called metadata. That metadata tells the who, what, when of when a file was touched, created, generated, moved, whatever. So there's always some type of forensic echo within the system you can go back and track. So if he did what they said they did, then they have a digital record of it, whether it was via USB or an external share drive. To me, these systems, if this information that they're alleging is so sensitive, why the hell is it on a public-facing internet system in the first place, where any hacker could get to it if they wanted to? If this stuff, if your aerodynamic data, your setup data is so competition sensitive, why is it that I can access Google at all from that laptop? whatever asset is. Like, this to me just shows how behind the technology world, even though they've hired all these engineers and all these people in the last, decade within NASCAR, shows me how behind security they are in how they do business. Like, they're still stuck in the Stone Age, the Jake Elder age, where you just pack up your toolbox and you go to the next one, if you will. And I saw somebody make that comment. It was hilarious to me. They're like, I bet you nobody ever sued Jake Elder for packing up his toolbox and going to the next team and taking his, his basically his brain with him, or his setup notes.
Well, and the other stupid part is we're constantly hearing over and over again all the data that they put out there for every fucking team to see what the other teams are doing anyway. So what is he really going to walk out of there with?
Right. I mean, I agree. So unless it's contractual data, or
well, that was one thing I heard that I did hear, is that they had payroll. There were some payroll, some of that shit linked as well.
So, and that stuff I can totally see, because that is company private, Privacy Act, all kinds of stuff. There's different laws around that. But as far as the competition material, and neither one of those should be on internet-facing devices. First off, that again just goes back to how lax in security. And I'm sure they are not the only ones. NASCAR teams are. Like, in establishing my business, the very first thing I did was I walled off all my financial and point of sale systems from everything else that was public facing. They still had to be able to reach out to file credit card transactions, everything, but I built firewalls and VPNs around it to protect that data. So why was this stuff not protected in a way that's commensurate with its true sensitivity? And it makes me wonder, like, I'm sure we're going to see, probably there will be garage discussions about it that leak out. Like, other teams will go look at their, are we as well protected from essentially insider threat as we think we are from our, most valuable asset, in a way, whether it's contracts and how we do our sponsorship deals, or how we put the car onto the track. Are we as well protected as we should be to ensure that, because with this, again, with as tight as, from the competition standpoint, as tight as these cars are, being that we all have the same access to the same part, and it's very much about who you have putting it together and how they put it together. That is very sensitive. You can take a legacy motorsports from the back and supplant JGR if you give them all their proprietary information, and they have a long enough time to, process it and make it useful to them. To me, the other thing that I feel like they're making a big deal out of, that's not really a big deal. These are two different makes. Chevy is Spire and JGR is Toyota. What worked for those bodies is not going to work in a Chevy. They are totally
What about the suspension, though?
Now, yeah, you could put the same suspension stuff again, but if it doesn't work with the aerodynamics, it's only going to be so valuable. And all that data gets outdated very quickly because they're continuously learning. So, longer. Yeah, go ahead.
If it's suspension, look how damn good that 11 car was at Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix Gateway. If it's suspension, Phoenix isn't really an aero track. So, like, if it's that kind of stuff, it is a big deal, right?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not downplaying the importance of it, but when you look at the evolution of these cars, go ahead, Chris.
Well, that's where I would be interested to, like, I think kind of where you may have been headed. I'd be interested to see, because the suspension is ultimately going to react to that car depending on how the car makes downforce, and depending on how that air is flowing over that car. If that air is not touching in the same spot because it's got a different body profile, the suspension is not necessarily going to make that. It's not going to translate.
Right. And that's where I was going with that. And then on top of it, so one of the things Kevin Kruger over in the other group that I talked to had asked, they were basically, people were asking, like, what's the difference between a non-compete and an NDA and all these things. And so the NDA essentially establishes that you can't talk about what you did wherever you were at ever, or whatever the terms are in there, whether it's a lifetime, a 10-year period, whatever. A non-compete just says you can't go work for a competitor in a similar role for a certain period of time. I'm really surprised NASCAR doesn't have within its teams more non-competes, because if you want to leave, that's fine. But basically, all they had to do at JGR was say, when you hire your people, and they may examine this in the future going forward, but let's just take Cliff Daniels, for example. Okay, Hendrick built him up in-house. He's been there. He's great. In his next contract extension that he just signed with Kyle Larson, I would hope that if for some reason somebody came and made him a better offer, there's a non-compete clause in there that says, like, you can't go compete for a competing Chevy, Toyota, whatever organization within the Cup Series for a period of 12 months. If I do that to you, it does two things. One, it makes you reconsider, is the grass truly greener on the other side? But the other thing is, in 12 months, all the things you knew, and because you no longer have access to them, are extinct.
Are now obsolete. Yep.
So whatever value you bring, what I've done is I've diminished your value to the competition greatly, very quickly. And so, like in the case of JGR here, I'm truly surprised they didn't have a non-compete. You just promoted this guy to your head of competition, and you saw all the Toyota in-house cars rise as a result. Briscoe went up, Bell went up, Hamlin went up, and we even see Ty Gibbs make improvements at the end of the season. So why is this guy not on a non-compete? If he's that critical to your role in your organization, and all the information he took is so critical, why do you not have other legal things in place? So, like, I see a bunch of different pain points that need to be examined within the case, and they may look at it. If I'm Gabehart's attorney and I'm trying to poke holes in their case, I would ask, okay, so present to me the artifacts that you said I took. What are they marked? Do they say competition sensitive? Do they say proprietary? Do they say not for, what kind of marking is on there would be one of them. And then what kind of systems were they on? Again, how well were they protected? So this is an interesting thing because it happened so much back in the day and still does, but you don't see too many people at this level leave. But I'm sure we know this happens all the time. Like for Mark Martin, I remember Roush saying back in the day that he thought that people would take his shocks that were laying on carts and stuff at various racetracks when he would be doing inventory to kind of examine them and figure out how they were doing their suspension stuff and their coil binding and all those kind of things.
Reverse engineer.
Yeah, and try and reverse engineer it, or how Ray Evernham and Chad Knaus were doing what they were doing with the cars back in the day. People would, you got people walking by with cameras in the garage just taking video that are casually in there. I mean, this is a thing within the sport. So it'll be an interesting lawsuit. But that's all I got on it for now. I just wanted to give you guys the floor for any final thoughts on it or anything else you want to talk about with it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that I have anything else to touch on that before we get over to talk about NASCAR's slow transition to wanting to be like F1. Had anybody else catch the comment that Junior made about Gluck getting, basically they told him, you need to come up, if you don't like the name of the podcast, you need to come up with another name in 24 hours. And Junior said, man, because they gave you NASCAR stipulations.
Yes, that was hilarious when they were like, oh, you got charter stipulations.
Yeah. But is it just me, or I think he absolutely missed the opportunity. I mean, the Gluck cast, I'm sorry, just sounds fucking retarded. Yeah. In my opinion, they need to change it to what the Gluck is going on in NASCAR.
Yeah, there was a couple different things you could have done. Yeah, what the Gluck would have been great.
Yep.
A Glucking good time, all kinds of different things you could have done with it. So yeah, I felt like they took the lazy way out and it was uninspired for that. I'm glad we're getting an opportunity to have more content. And when you see, I'm trying to remember who it was. Maybe it was Kelly Crandall or maybe it was Shannon McMenemy posted on Twitter the other day. Like basically, here's all the media personalities that work for Junior Motorsports now, or Dirty Mo Media, and it's basically the best of the best. So you've got, like, they basically are NASCAR media for all intents and purposes, which I like because it's, you're guaranteed to get good content. You got you got drivers, owners, crew chiefs, spotters, you know, and
That's
then
the one thing I
and
thought
then
was weird about. That's one thing I thought was weird about Harvick going over to and being on the NASCAR platform instead of over there with
yeah,
Junior being a part owner with him
yeah,
of the car store.
yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I was wondering why he didn't do that. And honestly, I'm surprised that Dirty Mo Media hasn't snatched up Landon and can't think of his damn name for some reason, but they'll come to me in a second. Parker Clearman.
Flagerman.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't go grab them. You grabbed Schrader and you grabbed Herm, or yeah, and Kenny Wallace, and brought them into your fold. And now Kenny Wallace has his own little media empire, which is great because again he's bringing in more content. So yeah.
So
Oh, the
before we
one
get
last thing with
into,
the lawsuit, I just wanted to say real quick. I am curious if this has been brewing in the background, and that's why we haven't heard announced that he was officially moved to Spire. If it was like, we got to keep this quiet because maybe they were trying to do some type of behind the scenes resolution before dropping the lawsuit. That's the only other reason I can think of. Like, what would your reason not be for not announcing this at this point? We're already a race into the season, and I don't think it's been formally announced yet that he's on Spire's payroll.
Not that I've heard.
Now, that being said, when you look at the lawsuit stuff and how Jeff Dickerson played into it with the NASCAR side of things, Inspire, and then you look at this conduct here and the people they're bringing in, and then you saw Rodney depart from Spire for reasons behind the scenes. It does make me like, what kind of business do these guys run compared to the traditional teams? They're definitely not doing it the way the older generation did, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but obviously it's very disruptive compared to the way traditional team owners run their teams. So, all right, so let's move on to the Blake's wife has money that he doesn't know about.
Blake was gonna
Group.
Blake was gonna say something there, dude.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
So, did you guys hear yesterday? Apparently, sorry, I'm trying to get back here. This here. O'Donnell says midweek races and shorter schedules are on the table.
I did not. I'd be okay with that. Less is more.
I knew you would be, and I'd be okay with midweek races. But I wonder where Fox, Prime, TNT, and NBC stand on this after paying. Is this something that would happen after the 7-year contract? Because you're paying for a 38 race schedule, not a 32 race schedule, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not even the amount of races; it's the amount of weeks that you're actually getting paid for. So, I mean, you're basically looking at a 40-week race season, counting the Clash and the All Star race.
Yeah.
And which I think will also be interesting because, I mean, for them to come out and say that now is almost confusing because it was just a couple months ago they were saying how all of these guys were saying, no, we don't ever see that happening because the ratings were so bad during COVID.
Yeah.
And everybody was even sitting at home and still wouldn't watch them in midweek.
So one of the things that interests me about this, it's because, so you look at Formula One's expanding their schedule and its popularity within the U.S. in terms of based on, I want to say clearly based on popularity, not that it's expanding its popularity. I mean, its popularity has expanded obviously based off the demand, but I wonder how much of this is dictated again by the elephant in the room, which is you have the NFL wanting to add more games because they are the biggest ratings draw when it comes to TV from a sports league perspective. So if they expand their season, then you have to compete against them even longer. So is it not necessarily in your favor to now contract anyway? You've got shorter weekends and stuff. We've proved we can turn around with the midweek races. Maybe they don't draw as much as they did, but if we have to remember that was also during a period where NASCAR was, up until recently, still pissing off the fans. So with all of their decision making and not going back towards this, hell yeah, I wonder if this is the result would change if you have more fans returning because we're returning to a classic style point system and a more competitive environment, etc. How that might change the overall acceptance of it. Granted, you've lost a lot of your stars since that period too. You don't have Jimmy Johnson full time. You don't have Kevin Harvick full time. You don't have some of the bigger names have, Tony Stewart has completely walked away from the sport. So there's definitely some detractors there if you're trying to leverage this, in my mind, from a shorter schedule standpoint. You're going to have to do something to build these guys up to draw the eyeballs. Because midweek, for everybody that's a working person, midweek, most people go to their local short tracks because it's just right there. They're not going to go and take vacation in the middle of the week to go to like Darlington or Bristol or something like that. That's just not realistic for the vast majority of fans. What do y'all think?
I personally wouldn't mind a Wednesday night race, but I'm a 4 a.m. to 12:30, and I'm off Thursday, so it's whatever for me. It would suck for Chris and you sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, more than likely, if I'm going to have to go to it, I mean, as far as watching it during the week, I basically wouldn't be able to watch it until I got home. I'd have to tape it. But I think it'd be friggin' awesome the way that we pick our vacations, they run Sunday to Saturday. So that kind of makes some of this shit hard when I want to come out, like when we go out to Bristol. That really makes it a fucking pain in the ass, other than it's going to be Friday and Saturday night races that are all night races, so I can have the potential to travel back on Sunday. But I mean, even when I get back on Sunday, I mean, fuck, that's a full day of fucking traveling. Then I'm going to have to turn around and go right back to work on Monday. If I can find some races that they're going to implement in the middle of a week, that makes it fucking awesome for me to be able to travel, watch a race, come back, relax, fucking be able to get my bearings and then go back to work and not just have to fucking rush right back to work. So I don't know. I thought doing some of the midweek races would have been a great idea anyways, but yeah, while
like
I'm working is going to suck, but
yeah, during COVID, I enjoyed the midweek races. I can understand from a attendance standpoint how it can hurt your tracks, but I think we've all said and agreed in the past, they've tried to turn this sport into a must watch, not must attend. So if that's all you're caring about is the eyeballs on screen, then midweek should be fine, especially if you can claim that space as your own and truly own it. Not just like we're throwing it out there with a test dummy balloon, but you genuinely put all your effort into it. I think that could work out well. But they can't go half in and kind of like they did with the stage caution deal a couple of years ago. You have to do it for more than a couple races. You got to give it time to catch. You can't just do it for one season. Well, we didn't like the numbers, so we're going to bail on it. You got to give it time for adoption, like anything.
I wonder if this is their way of competing with what the NFL does. They have Thursday night games.
Yep.
And B, they're so scared of the NFL that they're trying to end the season on Labor Day. I've heard a rumor they're wanting to end the season on Labor Day weekend because the next weekend, what starts? NFL.
Yep.
You start a
that's
week
a
after
lot
the
of
NFL.
midweek races. Holy shit.
You start a week after the NFL is over, and you end a week before they start.
Well, last year we had a discussion, I believe, if I remember correctly, one of our early episodes, we talked about, like, if you were president for the day, what would you do? I remember we pitched different schedule links, and I went with 26. I don't remember how many you went with, Blake or Chris. I could go pull it back up.
I went with what we have.
I think I was very much a big fan of let's go to a 26 race schedule because it would give you an even more urgency to perform. You would increase the pressure without having to without modifying any of the format in terms of points or things like that. You would just have a smaller time window, and it would give fans that desire to watch more because now you have less is more, just like some of the sports that have cut back or only run a short period of time. Even though the NFL wants to expand their games, it's still only 18, I believe. So
it's 17.
Yeah,
18 weeks, 17 games.
Yeah, so 17 games, 18 weeks. And there's tons of games happening every weekend where NASCAR has one race a weekend per series. But I still think a 26 schedule race would work fine, or even a 30 where you just drop off 6 events, because they break up into nice numbers. You could have a 20 race and a 10 race chase, or you could have a 16 and a 10, that still aligns, and you wouldn't have to do anything
Well,
to the points.
if you lower the season, you have to lower the amount of the chase. I mean, look at what the trucks do. The trucks have what 24 races, and they have a 7 race playoff or
Well,
chase.
honestly, at 26, I'd probably keep it 16 and 10. And you've got 16 events. I would get rid of all the doubles, the double, returns to tracks that are not necessary. And basically our 26 races are going to be at the 26 places that give us the absolute best product for both TV and in the stands. And the only places that get doubles are the places that are absolutely necessary. So if what you saw is true, and they are actually considering that, I'm very curious to see what's being batted around and proposed, because there's some possibility for some good stuff in there. But again, it's very much subject to when will we start the season, when will we stop it, what would the destinations be, what's the goal, if you will.
Yeah,
Is it to get us out from having to compete with the NFL? Okay, that's one.
that's all it has to be. There's no other thing, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that's probably it, but not knowing, 100% what the driving factor is. But to me, that's the most logical factor, is we're trying to not have to compete against the NFL. So, all right. Any other midweek news we want to talk about prior to?
Well, I don't know if you guys talked about it or not. I can't remember. I listened to the episode when I was working, but the comment that was made about the restrictor plate racing, saying, "Well, if I turn the volume off and I'm just watching it," I was like, "Holy
so we
shit,
mentioned
dude."
it. Yeah, I thought that comment was very much tone deaf to the reality of what's going on with the racing and to what the fans are saying. And no different than the tone deafness they had before Mark Martin stood up and said we have to make a change to this, to the following things. Because Michael Waltrip had said that, I believe it was last year, same thing. Well, if I just turn it off and I just watch it 3 wide, it looks awesome. The casual fan doesn't know that they're running 50%, 40%, 30%, whatever the case may be, throttle. Well, again, your new mantra is hell yeah, like we're going back to the old days. So which fan are you trying to please? If you're trying to get the old school fan back, that's not the right answer.
Nope.
So
the F1 fans is who they're trying to please. We'll find out here shortly.
Yep. So, but now if those guys are your goal, I mean, okay, I wouldn't be chasing those people. They are there for the experience, not so much all the people you see go to the F1 races. They're there for the clicks, to be seen, the influencer type status. Like, look where I was at this thing. They don't actually care about what's going on track. If they did, they wouldn't go there, because there's nothing happening on track. Whoever's out front's out front. Like, there's very few times in a F1 race where somebody passes whoever qualified so well, unless they have some type of forced error or a competition issued penalty. So, yeah, but it's definitely interesting. Anything else before we jump into club? Get out your money.
I'm good.
All right. So I didn't know anything about this. Chris, you heard about it. So give us the details, my friend.
I mean, I didn't have time to really go back and dive into it a whole lot, but Gluck actually talked about it on his new podcast.
Let's see what I can
and
find
I guess it's $10,000 is what it costs to be able to do it, and it's aimed at the F1-esque high profile guests, made to or hired chefs. Yep, hired chefs that are going to prepare meals for you. What they call a mixologist, which is basically a glorified bartender. That's not, you're not just going to get your beer and your Jack and Coke. You're going in for whatever drinks that I almost guarantee I probably wouldn't even know what 3/4 of them are even fucking called.
Yeah. So
And then
the article about it was published on the 17th. So they just released like the news snippet about this after the 500. But okay, go ahead.
I think it's funny. I mean, I don't know. I just this is kind of where I touched on this a little bit. I think this is kind of goes back to the episode that me and Blake kind of got after each other with just the way that the sport's going about trying to be too much. I mean, we're not stick and ball sports, and they forced and forced and forced and tried to push this fucking sport to stick and ball sports, and the fans didn't like it. Now we're going back. But on the same hand, you go through, and for me, it seems like a specialized fan. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not rich people out there like NASCAR, but if you really like NASCAR that much, why do you got to go? Why are they trying to make NASCAR into? I mean, hot dogs, hamburgers, and fucking beer is what goes with NASCAR.
Yeah.
Not filet mignon and fucking shrimp cocktail and fucking martinis. I don't know. It kind of baffles me. Again, it goes right back to, so what kind of fan are you actually trying to please here?
So reading this news press article to go with it. So let's go into the first one. It says NASCAR signature experience.
You're reading your email, right?
No, I'm reading the article that was published.
Me
on
and
the
Chris
17th.
didn't get the email. We figured you got one.
I did not. They found out I was.
No, it was just Christina.
It was just your wife, Blake. So I'm very curious, if,
I'm still trying to get to the bottom of that.
You married up, but you didn't know it. So NASCAR signature.
So I think we have the wrong person on the podcast here with us, Alan.
Yeah, we're gonna need Christina.
She's not here right now.
We need the professional in here to fucking to talk about that.
Tell us about the article.
So they're quoted as saying NASCAR signature experience represents the next evolution of premium fan experience at a NASCAR race weekend. This is per Michael Verlotti, vice president of the Signature Experience Group. I don't know what the fuck a Signature Experience Group is, or if that's a NASCAR position or one of these, kind of like an interior decorator.
Is he like the one that does the accounting?
He's probably making $400,000 a year to be like an interior designer. But it says with 1948, a nod to NASCAR's founding history and Rev House, we're creating distinct environments that blend elevated service, curated culinary programs, to your point, Chris, about the chef, and immersive storytelling. The goal is to bring fans and partners closer to the sport by delivering distinct, high-touch experiences that combine access, service, energy in a way that is unmistakably NASCAR. And then later they mentioned things like DJs and etc. So I concur entirely that it is essentially, how can we be like F1, where if you've seen and you're an F1 fan or just even a passerby or reviewing what they've done in the last couple of years with Miami, Vegas, etc., with these hospitality suites that are in the tens of thousands of dollars to have all these, exclusive accesses. That this seems like a Ben Kennedy idea to me.
Oh, no doubt.
Wholeheartedly. I know
No.
he would never. But yeah, this screams Ben Kennedy to me all day long. Not anybody else. This is all Ben Kennedy from what just reading it. And the next generation. So in that first set of statements, based on what they say it's supposed to be for, so high touch experiences that combine access. So we already have to pay for autograph sessions a lot of the times, and and to me this is bad, and it's bad because if you're selling this as a way to meet drivers and have a better connection with them, NASCAR for the longest time has been known for it being one of the highest fan accessible, fan friendly events. So now you're telling me you're going to raise that cost to an elite level that prices out the majority of your fans. I'm not saying we don't have fans that have boats and yachts and all that stuff, because every sport does, but that's not, we are a blue collar sport, or were, and the vast majority of your fans are blue collar workers. That means they make $15-$20 an hour at most on average, sometimes 30. They work for they work in your trades, your warehouses. They're the people that run this country in the background that you just overlook on a daily basis and take for granted. Plumbers, carpenters, forklift workers, delivery drivers. Talking about you too. All these different people that make your shopping experiences and just make the country go. That's who NASCAR fans traditionally have been. Iron workers like my dad, things like that. So we would have obviously we would never have been able to afford to do this. I can't afford to do it today, hell, but it definitely screams like your elite crowd, based on what I'm reading. I would definitely like to see like almost like an influencer video from somebody in the background going forward, at some point, about what this looks like behind the scenes.
Well,
like
we
how
will,
much
because those
drivers access you really get compared to going to a traditional, back in the day in the 80s, 90s, you had the hospitality events. Like you could go to Exalta or DuPont, back then DuPont or Haviland or whatever, and meet Davey Allison or Jeff Gordon or whatever. And they were accessible to the everyday person. This is definitely not accessible to the me, you, everyday people by any means. So,
I just don't see anybody spending $10,000 for one day of glamorous food and a 3.5 hour race. I mean, for 10 grand, somebody better be coming to the bathroom and wipe my butt for me.
So, well, it's supposed, from
Yeah,
what Christina read, when I was on the phone with Blake and them yesterday about this, it includes like pre-race, the pit road access, a ride along on the track at some point during the weekend, probably the morning before the race. But still, you talked about the influencer video. We're going to see them because those are going to be the kind of fucking people that get to go. So we're probably going to get to see them from that standpoint, if you know who to follow or who to watch. But the big thing that goes back to one of the first things we touched on with this, it was fans like us, the accessibility that it gives us to the drivers. I've already seen a huge influx, especially the big one is Chase Elliott. When he goes out on the midway now and goes to the trailer, you have to purchase $100 plus to get a wristband to get the autograph. You don't just show up at the trailer, stand in line, and go get an autograph. You have to spend $100 or you don't even get the opportunity to stand in fucking line. So it's already getting out of hand.
For you.
Well, it's not just Chase that does it.
Yeah, I'm not blaming Chase there. That's whoever the licensing reps are. That's Chase.
I'm sure that Chase has a little bit to do with it. He doesn't. I mean, we're talking about somebody that puts a hat and a hoodie on, puts the hoodie up, and walks with his head down.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to say he's completely innocent by any means in terms of that cost and the price gouging. What I'm saying is, I'm sure that it's his name and his NIL team that dictates a lot of that. And he's like, yeah, that's good. That they show him the numbers, and he says, yeah, that's what I'm happy with that number. And
my point on that though, my point with that though is now we're going to get to the point where even if somebody goes through and has been there the last couple of years and couldn't get that autograph, now saves up $100, goes to the race, and now guess what? Now these guys that have spent $10,000 to get in, they're now going to have their set times that they get to go meet with these people that fucking spend all this money to get in, and guess what? They may not even show up at the trailer now. So you just saved that $100 to go be able to get that autograph, and he's not even going to appear at the trailer now because he's got to be up there with the fuckers sipping on martinis.
Yeah. Well, they've got only 3 events listed so far for this year as they roll this out. I'm assuming it's kind of like a test balloon. You've got the Navy Base Corps race, the Daytona fall race, and the championship weekend.
Plus the 500. They did it at the 500.
Plus the one they just did at the 500. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to bring this up. So my uncle, he was a fan of Davey, and he would go to all the races and everything. Davey Allison knew him by name, and my uncle didn't spend a bunch of money for that to happen. He just would go to these hospitality events and stuff, and he would remember his name the next time he came back, and that ingrained a fandom for him well past his death and passing for my uncle and his wife and our family as a whole, because Davey was so approachable during that stuff. He'd come in and be like, "Hey, Bill, how's it been? How's the business? Yada yada yada." And my uncle wasn't a rich man when he was attending these things. These were just like, "Oh, you would enter a contest and you would get to go do it, and he'd got to have dinner or whatever and sit in the car and stuff." Now you're putting this massive price tag on it. And so if I'm going to pay that kind of money, then I want a driver's dedicated time too. Like, I'm not giving you $10,000, however that's broken up and split out between the royalties and everything, for just like a meet and greet. Like, okay, I'm coming to this big suite. Like, I'm expecting lunch or dinner or something for this, because that's a lot of money to anybody, period.
That's why I'm saying we're going to start missing out on the midway, because those
Yeah.
drivers are now going to be dedicated to these fucking experiences for these people that are paying all this money, and we're going to be the ones that are ultimately missing out. The everyday fans, the ones that have been watching it.
Yep.
You call it the 1948 club. What a fucking slap in the face to us, because we've been here since 1948, and you're absolutely shitting on us.
So here's the benefits it gets you specifically from the thing. Like you said, okay, so there's a garage and pit road access pass, pre-race viewing area, some kind of dedicated area. You're in the victory lane celebration, access to the driver appearances. You get some type of gift, parking, VIP shuttle, the official track lap, like you mentioned. And then on top of it, the private hospitality access, owner's suite level at Daytona. As an example, you're right near what they would consider the best vantage point, start finish line, which I think many race fans would describe the best race vantage point, different per track. You know, what NASCAR thinks is the best place may not be. You know, maybe I want to see them coming out of turn 2, because they tend to bust their ass. You know, so it's not necessarily, we're not all in agreement where the best place to watch the race is by any means. This does remind me of when Eddie Gossage tore down those stands in the exit of, is it turn 4 or turn 2?
Turn
He
2.
tore them down, turn 2, and put in the RV spots for like $10,000 a spot, where you could park your RV literally right next to the track.
You mean like they did in Vegas?
I thought you were talking about the condos at Texas. Sorry.
Oh yeah, but I mean, remember when they turned down the stands on the backstretch in that area, and you could basically pull your RV, your Class C, Class A, whatever, right up to the fence of the track, more or less.
They did that at Kentucky Speedway right from the start. The back straightaway was all RV.
Right.
Yeah,
the difference is they didn't go out of their way and charge you $10,000 for it. Eddie Gossage, like, I remember that specifically being a very expensive ticket to get.
Vegas did. The grandstands, they weren't permanent, but they did have grandstands for many years that went all the way to about the 3/4 of the way down the straightaway. The grandstands used to start just before the entrance to turn 3, and they wrapped all the way around until the fucking entrance to turn 1. And they ended up tearing all that shit out of there, made it fucking RV parking, and it's fucking expensive. I mean, they're fucking, I mean, they're like tour buses parked up on that fucking hill. It's not people in little fucking campers. It's fucking tour buses fucking parked up there.
Yeah, they roll up in $130,000 to $230,000 bus, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It's called a Class A RV, but it's essentially a personal bus, like the NASCAR drivers. Sometimes some of them are nicer than the NASCAR drivers' buses. If you ask Mark Martin, he'll tell you.
Well, and the sad part is, I was just going to say, one of the people that parked up there all the time was Mark.
Yep. So yeah, I have a ton of different problems with this thing. I don't know how successful it will be, because we don't attract those same kind of people that they're chasing, that are Formula One people. I mean, it could go, we could be wrong and they attract them, but I don't know that we want them, truthfully. You know, I'm not saying we don't want other fans, but I don't know that we want those kind of fans.
The only problem is, we're kind of seeing it.
Yeah.
We have sponsors like Gainbridge in here. We have fucking sponsors that are, I mean, that's where this shit is coming from. That's why this influx is coming in, because they've absolutely fucking destroyed the mom and pop shops and the fucking just everyday. I mean, granted, O'Reilly and places like that have fucking stepped up to keep themselves relevant in the sport. But when's the last time you saw fucking Western Auto, anything like that on a fucking car? You just don't anymore.
No, you're right, because you got Moneyline game at the time, Game Bridge, and all these other basically private equity firms and investment partner platforms. Or
We
essentially, if you go back and look at the Super Bowl commercials, it's the same thing. Our NASCAR race cars are turning the same thing. It's either medicine,
yeah.
RFK,
Yep.
and all their stuff, all those partnerships, gambling, 2311, Chumba Casino, all those things, DraftKings, all those partnerships,
Yep.
or private equity firms and money and banking. Like those are the only three things we advertise now. We very little do we advertise. Like the DeWalt sponsorship, for example, for Christopher Bell is a thing of the past where you're advertising a product that an everyday consumer would use.
Oh yeah.
Like those things are going away very quickly.
And that was one thing. That was something I was just going to say. We're all working on getting to Bristol for the race later this year for the night race. Dude, I would even go as far as to say, with what we do here on this podcast, as a group, walk around that racetrack and take a list of sponsors and ask the fans. Say, we want to know what the fans think. Do you know what this sponsor is?
You do even know what they make? Do they make an erectile dysfunction pill? Do they make something that moves a leak from your nose to your ass? Like, what is it they do? Are they an investment firm? Like, what's the thing? Are they a telecommunications company? Are they gambling? Like, what's their thing?
Yeah.
But the majority of it, for sure, is not your blue collar companies anymore. The Tide,
No,
the
it's
Gain,
not.
Doritos, Mars, UPS, FedEx, like all those things are gone. So the day-to-day touch points that you advertise to the NASCAR core fan base, those things are disappearing very rapidly. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this. Like I said, I'm interested to see when the first influencer videos come out from it, depending on its adoption rate, kind of like how you have with the F1 stuff, to see how many years it sticks around. How do they expand it? Do they bring it in tiers, or is it literally going to be like a top tier only? Or are they going to make it more accessible? Like we'll have a top tier and then maybe like a middle tier that's a little bit more affordable. Let's say it's $1,000 a person. Because I bring it to this. So in 2018, I went to the NASCAR. The last, I think it was 18 or 19 was the last one at Miami. Was it 18?
19.
19. Okay. So the second to last year at Miami for Ford Championship weekend, I purchased 3 passes, 3 ticket packages. Each ticket package was just under $700. For that $700, I had a VIP suite, like viewing area above the pit boxes for all 3 races. I got a NASCAR prototype every day for a diecast, and I had tickets to all 3 races. And I got to go down to Victory Lane every night, and that was $700 a person. So that in terms of from 2018 to now, you're talking in a decade. You've taken now. I'm not getting all those other things. We didn't have the chef and all that, but I don't think it's no $10,000 justification and cost increase to go from that package to that
for one day.
For
not the entire weekend, for one fucking day.
And that was for the whole weekend. That was like $700 a person for the weekend. And we know if you're a diecast collector, a prototype on its own paid for that. Like all I did was collect the prototypes, so they weren't somebody I wanted. I turned around and sold mine, and it paid for itself. It was like getting to go do that for free. So, yeah, this is a totally out of reach thing for the
and now we're getting fucked out of those.
Yeah, that's a whole nother. Yeah.
Chris, Allen doesn't want to tell you, but he's not going to be down in the pits with us peons in September. He's going to be hobnobbing, eating some filet mignon.
Look, I will grill some filet mignon before we go and bring it in like a little baggie. That's about as close as we're getting.
We get the cold ones.
Yeah, well, because that's about as much as I'm going to do for that. Because
we're bringing you some cutlets, Chris.
We'll bring you some, and they're in the little zip pouch that the dog food comes in. There's the cutlets. But yeah, I just like if they had said this was $1,000 experience, I think you would get way more participation.
Absolutely.
From across the entire
even spectrum. At $2,000, you probably get more.
Because if I'm going to one race for the year, and you tell me that we can go do this and it's going to cost me $2,000 but I'm going to come see my favorite driver, and I'm only getting to come to one race a year. I could stomach that. $10,000 though is just insane. So,
Well, you
Oh,
need
and
to start saving for the next, I don't know, 5 years and do one every 5 years, Alan.
And here's something else that I really don't understand, and why would NASCAR would not take the initiative to put something like this on the fucking midway and make it accessible to everybody. But
Yep.
they're also supposed to have these areas. Gluck talked about it. Have these areas where these people that are paying this money are curated with history and artifacts from NASCAR all the way back in the day. You think the
Oh,
regular fucking fan doesn't want to see shit like that? How many people can honestly fucking travel and go to the fucking NASCAR Hall of Fame and see stuff like that? They fucking dig to be able to go to a fucking race and don't get the opportunity to see shit like that unless you fucking
yep.
fork over $10,000 to NASCAR. Fucking come on, man.
And then on time, the one thing I didn't even think about and should have right off the bat is on top of the cost being just for one day for this for one day of the 3 day of weekend that is usually the race weekend. This doesn't cover my lodging or all my other stuff when I'm not at
Nope.
the track. This is 10 grand just to do it at this one event for the one day, and that doesn't include my travel costs, my other costs that go to getting there, plane tickets, whatever, rental cars. This is just $10,000 to be at the track. That's nuts.
Yeah.
So
I think we lost Blake.
no,
He got bored.
so anything else about it we want to talk about?
I don't think so.
I ain't got nothing. The only thing I got is something from Daytona. I am shocked at the amount of former drivers and just people that are coming to Natalie Decker's defense on her still waiting to hit the brake for this wreck to happen 10 seconds before she came into it. Like, Kenny Wallace is just got her back. Just like, has he forgotten what it's like that bad? Like, we're not race car drivers. None of us. We've been watching our entire lives, and we know that either A, she didn't listen to her spotter, which we know from prior videos that she doesn't listen to her spotters.
Yep.
Or that her spotter just didn't tell her it was there, but like it was legit
Well,
10 seconds.
Why tell her if she ain't gonna listen anyways?
Yeah, it was literally 10 seconds before she ran into Sam Mayer. So why are all these people coming to her defense about how?
Because they don't want to hurt her fucking feelings. She's one that goes out and then fucking when somebody says something, she goes and posts a fucking video on social media fucking crying about it.
Well, that
The only good thing for us that ever happened in the fucking past, other than she still, I'm into the trading cards and she still floods the fucking market, is Danica Patrick. But at least she wasn't fucking crying on social media every fucking week because somebody said something about her. But we're watching the same fucking thing happen with Decker that we did with Danica. She was a fucking crash specialist. If there was a wreck on the fucking track, it didn't matter if it was 3/4 of the way around the track. She was going to go fucking drive into it.
Yep. Well, it opens a bigger conversation point that NASCAR really doesn't want to have, and that's that they sell access to their race car at the end of the day to the highest bidder. And that highest bidder, it's not always money. It can be clicks. Cletus McFarland, for example. They talked about
Don't
him.
even get me started about him.
It can be Helio Castroneves. And it's no disrespect to him, but he was nowhere near ready to climb into a car at Daytona last year. But NASCAR has had a pay-to-play system for quite a while now that it needs to remedy and get back to, F1 has a license system for a reason. It doesn't matter that if you have 80 million views and followers and whatever, you're not getting in that car if you're not qualified. They take their driver qualifications very seriously. And so does, IndyCar. And for whatever reason, NASCAR has decided that anybody can get in a car. And that's both good and bad. To the history of the sport, anybody used to be able to show up with a car and attempt to drive the thing. So if you're gonna stick to tradition, then you kind of have to let them. But I don't think that means that if I won the lottery tomorrow, and let's say I won $200 million, and I went and bought myself, a small percentage of a truck team, and I wanted to go drive. No, by no means does that mean I'm now qualified to get in on a racetrack with these guys. There should be a ladder system. There should be a qualification system. Obviously, it does make me qualified based on how they allow people today. If I go buy it and say I'm going to race it, it doesn't matter if I wreck it my test, as long as I'm there and I do it. In the case of Cletus, where he wrecked at every single one of his events, he still got to strap into the car. And to me, it's a disservice to the person that you're trying to push forward. I get there's a shelf life to all the media and stuff like that. Kind of like Haley Deegan, for example. She did very well at the lower tier series, and then I feel like they kind of tried to push her through as fast as possible. Not as fast as they did with Danica, but a similar process. And when you do that, and the person that you're doing that with does not have the requisite experience, we see the result. They become a joke. The NASCAR mantra of we've got some of the best drivers in the world becomes a joke, even though we do. It's hard to say that. It really makes it hard to say they're athletes when it's pay to play. There's a lot of negatives that come from not policing your qualification system. So
I've got the best analogy I could think of off the top of my head here.
You put the anal in analogy.
NASCAR 25, Chris has played a little bit. There's a driver rating. Mm-hmm. And depending on how you do race to race, it's a 5-race driver rating online. So last night, I decided to do a few Talladega races. I was bored, just got in on Talladega. There's Daytona and Talladega all day freaking long. Well, I got wrecked like 3 races in a row. Dropped my driver rating from high A. It goes S, A, B, C. A high A to like I think I was like a 61C. And I was like, I'm done with this. I'm going to a truck room, because truck rooms are actually fun. Mm-hmm. Well, I get to this truck room. It's a Rockingham room. I'm a 61C. They saw that and booted me instantly. Didn't ask any questions. That's what NASCAR needs to get to.
Yeah.
You cause so many wrecks when you haven't run full seasons or whatever. Sorry, you're done. Boot you. But because they actually have the details where, the people that booted me had no clue that I had just been in Dega for a few lobbies, and now my score's low because I was wrecked, not because I did the wrecking.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a fair point. If you listen to the Money Lap with Kligerman and Castle, they talk about that a driver rating should matter, and you should score a certain number of points for finishing in the top 5 in the season. You should have to have a certain number of top 5s, lead lap finishes, laps led, wins even, to qualify to get there. Now, that would disqualify some people because some people were not good enough at a particular tier. Jimmy Johnson is a great example of really wasn't that good in the Grand National Series, if anything at all, but then it was spectacular in Cup. So you're going to have those outliers, but I think more often than not, you're going to get the right result. I mean, I would stand behind that, because you look at how many years it takes some of these guys to win in Cup today. Chase Elliott, 3+ years. Ty Gibbs, still winless. Won a bunch of races at the lower series, but at least he's qualified to be there. If he can't win still, well, then so be it. But at least he earned his right to be there, no question. With the number of wins he had at the lower series.
Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson both took 99 races to win.
Yep. Those guys both took a while to win, and it took a while from their first to their second win, and to earn their pedigree through. And it was like that for Mark Martin. And and when he went from what was at the time the Busch Series or Grand National Series to Cup, it's not just stepping in there. So even though she was at the middle tier when this happened, she's been there for a while, has several races now, and like Freddie Kraft said, she's averaging a 29th place finish. There ain't even, you're at the back already. There's only 16 good cars, so what are you doing? You're ridiculous.
You said that. That just proves you're a crash specialist. You're starting at the back of the field, and you're not doing anything to avoid anything that happens in front of you. You're just fucking driving into the wreck. That's all. That's all she does.
Yep, and you're not moving up because, and the times you do, it's because the other crash specialists crashed before you.
Yeah.
You know, the Garrett Smiths, the Smithley, you know, the Cody Wares, none of those
Chris
people
Wright.
should be in Cup. Chris Wright, yeah, all those kind of people. None of them, like Cody Ware has no business being in Cup. But
he can drive in circles around.
no, he could do circles around some other people, but I mean, he should be down at the lower level honing his skills. But this is a much bigger conversation that NASCAR needs to really take a hard look in the mirror at. And I'm hoping that by Landon and Parker continually beating the drum, kind of like Mark Martin beat the drum forever on the 36 race points thing, that eventually NASCAR will wise up, because it also hampers their drivers from becoming global superstars. If Kyle Larson wants to go drive an F1 doesn't deem NASCAR to be all that spectacular. It makes it hard for him to accumulate super license points when you're also having him on track, for example, with Natalie Decker. Well, if my lowest level competition looks like some lady pushing a golf cart that came from a soccer practice, of course you look like a fucking superstar at that point. If it's Kyle Larson versus, and your worst level of player is Ty Gibbs, that looks totally different in the eyes of the level of competition. And, that's really what it comes down to. On the global stage, we look ridiculous with people like that on the track. So I think that's all I got on that. But yes, I'm in agreement with you.
I have made the decision, though, that I think Richard Childress keeps Kyle Busch from running any Xfinity races so that he doesn't fucking go and bruise Austin Hill's ego at the restrictor plate tracks. And dude, did you guys hear what Denny said? That he literally does not have anybody that will fund a ride for him. He wants to run the restrictor plate tracks against Austin Hill, and nobody will step up to sponsor a ride for him.
Yep.
He goes, I've tried for numerous years.
I guarantee you, if he actually wanted to do it, all he had to do is pick up his phone. Hey, Michael, can I get Jordan Brand for one race?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an entirely valid argument. But I mean, I to your point, Chris, I think it's a bigger, if any of you listen to out there, or either you guys listen to it, when Joey does his segment with NASCAR radio, he's said the same thing. Like, he would love to go down and race for these lower tiers, but either the sponsors don't want to pay or they want him to bring money. He's like, I'm a top tier multi-time champion. Like, I'm not paying you to run race car. You should be paying me because you're paying for all that experience, the notoriety, the level of performance, etc. And that's how it should work.
Well, that's why Kyle's running 8 truck races this year, because it's all funded through fucking Spire. They've got the sponsors on the fucking truck. He has to bring nothing with him.
Well, like I said, Spire is a totally different animal.
Well, and investment. And I mean,
Hendrick Cars is one of them.
Yep. Well, and not only that, but I think it'd be pretty funny if Spire's like, hey, you know what? You turned over our whole organization to us, but fuck you. You can't get one of our trucks. We're never going to see that.
Yeah. Every asset we have,
in a Spire truck. Yeah.
So.
Well, we all know when Brexton's old enough, that's where he's going, Aspire trucks. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
I mean,
you would think, but I wouldn't be too surprised if, I mean, yes, I could see that happening. But I also wouldn't be too surprised if Brexton skipped trucks altogether and went straight to like the Hendrick 17 or to JRM.
I see what you're saying, but seeing that is the plan, to run truck series with basically the moment he's age eligible to run part-time, he's going to run the other part and Brexton run the parts that he can. I get what you're saying, but I don't see that.
Like, I look forward to the day when Kyle Busch and Brexton can race in the car store together, like Keelan and Kevin do. Like, that'll be good.
That's only a couple years out.
Yeah, but I'm looking forward to it. I would love to see that with Larson and his son, and with Clint Boyer and his kid.
Dude, I'm honestly kind of mad. I didn't realize last year in Vegas that they were actually running a fucking race over there, and both Keelan and fucking Kevin ran it right there at the bull ring, and I didn't fucking realize it. They didn't advertise it.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
that's shit, and that's stupid shit. That how do you think you draw fans into fucking NASCAR?
Mhm.
You have a fucking NASCAR champion on the fucking racetrack going head to head with his kid and everybody else that's trying to make it to the Cup Series.
Yep.
You had them there, accessible to the everyday fan at the fucking local racetrack right outside the big mile and a half, and it was not fucking advertised anywhere.
Yep.
Nothing like NASCAR stepping on their dick.
I got two things about the
Let's
kids.
say I gotta
coming-
go. So let's
real
wrap
quick.
it up. Yep, go ahead.
Real quick. So you mentioned you can't wait to see Brexton come up, and you mentioned Owen Larson and Kyle.
Yep.
Everything I'm hearing is Audrey is 2 times the driver that Owen is
Okay.
already.
I'm just looking at, like I said, the number of kids that these stars have had between. All right, you got Ella Gordon and Leo. You've got Cash Boyer. You got Larson's kids. You got now Tony Stewart's got a baby, but that one's going to go into a rocket ship, i.e., a dragster. You know, but still, you know, you've got all these were great race car drivers are now giving birth to more than likely future superstar race car drivers, assuming we still have cars well into the future. And I'm actually excited to see those kids on track against each other in the near future, because I think it's going to be, especially that current crop, because they're all very close in age. I think it'll be a hell of a show.
I mean, you can look at, even Keselowski, Logano,
Yeah.
all of them. I mean, I don't know. I don't hear a whole lot from the Gordon and Johnson side. I don't know that their kids are into the motorsports like you see with Owen and Cash and Brexton and all. You don't hear that side of the story a whole lot. I don't know that they have any interest in trying to carry on what they're fucking.
And maybe some of them don't, but I think there's enough of them. It would remind me, if they all were to come in around the same time, of that, you know, Gillette Young Guns era, when we had all those A+ level superstars sitting right there, all at the cusp of their, their careers kicking off. That would be something.
Yeah, fucking Hamlin, Casey Kane, Elliott Sadler, all those guys
Edwards,
in that era,
like all that, yeah, all of
Yep.
them in that mid-20s, early 30s, like do. So, all right. Anything else, gentlemen?
I'm good.
Okay. Appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll see what comes from tomorrow. We know for one thing's for sure, they won't be fuel saving, because that track doesn't allow for that shit. It's too fast, too high banked, compared to if you start rolling back, the back end will step out on you and you'll wreck. So I'm hoping for a better race than
I will be texting you the moment that I hear Cliff tell Larson to save fuel to the
So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they won't do any of it, but it ain't going to be like, let's park them 3 wide and not go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, all right. Till next time, gentlemen. Bye.
Later.
Later.